Hey, how you doing? It is I, the Terrific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy, and welcome to Retro Horror School, and happy Friday to you. This week was a very important horror movie anniversary, and in case you couldn't already tell from the shirt that I'm wearing, it is the anniversary of John Carpenter's The Thing. It came out on June 25th, 1982, which means it is 42 years old. Wow. This is going to be a deep dive and analysis into John Carpenter's The Thing. Not only for the fact that it is this movie's 42nd anniversary, but because this is a unique type of horror movie. Every time you watch it, you uncover something new. And I am still myself uncovering new things about The Thing. That is why The Thing is so important. This movie is just unique because you're always uncovering new layers. The Thing is an onion, and even 42 years later, we are still peeling stuff back. So let us set the scene of John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing takes place on a remote Antarctic research base called Outpost 31. There are 12 men who work on the base. We don't really exactly know what they do or what they research. We just know that they are there. It is isolated, it is cold, but they seem to be doing really good at just living their lives, playing ping pong, playing cards with each other, shooting the breeze. And then we have what is called the inciting incident. We have two men in a Norwegian helicopter who are following this dog and shooting at it. And they just happen to be going towards Outpost 31. So the men of Outpost 31, they come across the situation. They have no idea what's going on. They think that the Norwegians have gone nuts. But little do they know that the dog is infected, and the dog is this creature who can imitate many different life forms. It first starts to try and assimilate and infect the dogs, and then later on, it starts to assimilate and infect people. And then one by one, the men of Outpost 31 start to fall, whether through assimilation by the Thing or through untimely death. But in between all the death, there is this battle against the Thing, against who's who, and against how to stop. There are quite a few themes present in John Carpenter's The Thing. For this analysis, I'm going to talk about three: paranoia and trust issues, survival, and the theme of identity and humanity. First, paranoia and trust issues. Whenever it is found out that the Thing can transform into pretty much anything, any organic life form, and in the turning point of the movie, when it's found out that the Thing can turn into any human, that is when the paranoia and trust issues really start to build. So if you think about it, as Child said, if I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me?
We don't wait. Somebody in this camp ain't what he appears to be. Right now, that may be one or two of us. By spring, it could be all of us.
So how do we know who's human? If I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me?
You're supposed to be able to trust the people around you. And if you can't trust the people around you, then who can you trust? So if you think of the scene where Mac is talking to Blair, he says, trust is a tough thing to come by these days. Right after Blair goes, I don't know who to trust. That line just perfectly encapsulates the theme of paranoia throughout.
How you doing, old boy?
I don't know who to trust.
I know what you mean, Blair. Trust's a tough thing to come by these days. Tell you what, why don't you just trust in the Lord?
And then the scene where Mac is recording that tape when he was like, nobody trusts anybody now. You could tell just that he's worn down at the fact that he can't trust the men that he works with. Those two scenes perfectly encapsulate the theme of paranoia and trust issues. Survival. Of course, there's survival from a physical standpoint. They are in Antarctica, out in the middle of nowhere. Top it off that they've got a storm coming in. Top it off that a lot of their ways to get out were destroyed. They're having to try and keep from being assimilated, because that's the thing. They don't want to get assimilated. So the paranoia and survival just kind of go hand in hand. To try and survive, they have to keep a cautious and wary eye on the people around them. There's also survival from a psychological aspect, because this thing is not human. It is an unknown. So traditional techniques are not going to work against it. Well, besides burning the crap out of everything. But traditional techniques are not going to work against the thing. They had to really think on their feet to try and figure out who was who and how to survive. If you think near the end, McCready's like, well, we're not going to get out of this alive, but neither is that thing. They've gone through all the psychological turmoil and stress from the paranoia and the lack of trust, and it's finally down to Gary Knowles and McCready, and they have come to the conclusion that, look, we're going to have to kill this thing. So lots of psychological survival from having to outwit, outplay, and outlast the thing. Yes, I stole that tagline from Survivor. Sue me. Not really, don't sue me. Identity and humanity. The thing, in a sense, takes away identity from its ability to mutate. It imitated a million different life forms on a million different planets, and now it's on Earth. It first imitated a dog, a creature that we are all familiar with, and then it moved up to humans. Definitely something that we're all familiar with, because we are all human. So if the thing can take away human identity, then what does it mean to be human? When anybody could be the thing. So if you think about who was transformed, think about Palmer. Palmer was definitely the thing before the blood test took place, but nobody knew it until it was discovered. So what does it mean to be human? Now, there are 4 main types of character roles in this movie. There are the characters who are focused on leadership and survival. There are the characters who focus on things from a more scientific approach. There are the characters who are very paranoid and isolated from the men for one reason or another. And then there are the men who become victims of the thing and who are assimilated. As humans, we tend to want to put things into groups, and structuring the character roles in this way help us pick out their traits, help us establish who they are as people, and help us see how they interact with others and how they handle. It's pretty much the paranoia that ends up being the thing. The leadership and survival trio. First up, we have RJ McCready, who is played by Kurt Russell. He is a helicopter pilot and a somewhat reluctant leader who is resourceful, skeptical, and practical. So when you first see McCready after the incident with the chess wizard, you get a sense that he is respected because he is the helicopter pilot. He is one of the main modes in and out of Outpost 31. You get a sense that people respect him, and even though he wasn't the leader at this time, he was stepping up in leadership positions. So finding the dog in the kennel, the weird dog creature thing, telling Childs to burn it. So you can tell he was stepping up into his leadership roles and trying to defuse the whole Blair situation. That was also taking a leadership position. And then he stepped up whenever Gary relinquished his leadership position. He was a very tactical thinker, most likely due to the fact that his backstory was he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. But when the blood bags were destroyed, because Copper proposed the blood serum test, McCready thought of the blood test after he saw what happened with Norris in the examination room after his heart attack. Seeing that every piece tried to crawl away and slither away and protect its own life gave them the idea that the thing's blood could be something worth examining. Then also setting the camp on fire, blowing up the thing's mode of transportation out of there, so that way it wouldn't escape, so that way it wouldn't crawl away and have a chance to freeze. He was a very tactical thinker, always thinking of the situation and then trying to figure out ways to solve the problem. That's what made him a good leader and somebody that people could trust. And then you think of the final standoff with Childs. I call it a standoff. It's not like they went fisticuffs or anything, but kind of eyeing him up, saying, well, why don't we wait here for a while, see what happens against the tactics coming out. It's like, look, either you're going to reveal yourself as the thing, or I'm possibly going to reveal myself as the thing, or neither of us are going to reveal ourselves as the thing, and we're just going to freeze to death. Overall, McCready is just a very tactical leader, very resourceful, very practical. It's just like, we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it that way, and we're going to do it that way. All those traits is what makes him a good leader. Next up in the leadership and survival category, we have Childs, who is a mechanic, very strong-willed, confrontational, and skeptical. Those are his key traits. Childs is a bit of a hothead, pretty much a jump first, ask questions later, and there was a lot of tension between him and McCready. You could see the tension, especially when Childs said that we were going to have to kill him, and little things also during the blood test, like, this is a crock of shit.
Now I'll show you what I already know.
It's a crock of shit.
So there was very palpable tension going on between him and McCready, because they had very different ideas about how things should be done. And I don't think it was necessarily the fact that he truly wanted to be a position of leader. It's because of the fact that he didn't agree with a lot of the things that McCready was doing. So yes, he is very strong-willed and was willing to ask questions and push back. He wasn't necessarily a follower. He didn't follow McCready verbatim, and a leader does need to be questioned and they need to be pushed back against from time to time. But overall, the tension that was brewing between Childs and McCready, and also because of the whole atmosphere of tension and paranoia, probably would not have made him the best of leaders, but he was definitely one of the final two who survived by any means necessary. Next up in the leadership survival role, we have Gary, who is played by Donald Moffat. He is a station commander who is authoritative and by the book, traditional, and then a sense of desperation as the movie went on. From the beginning, you could tell he was the leader. He was the one that took charge on the situation with the Norwegian. He was the one that tried to stay very cool, calm, and collected, but the desperation was definitely leaking through, especially when he was accused of sabotaging the blood.
And I got the only key.
Will that test have worked, Doc?
Oh, I think so. Yes.
Somebody else sure thought so.
Well, who else could have used that key?
Nobody. I just give it to Copper whenever he needs it.
Could anybody have gotten it from you, Doc?
I don't see how. As soon as I'm finished, I return it right away. Great.
When was the last time you used it?
Huh? A day or so ago, I guess.
I suppose somebody could have lifted it off me.
Oh,
That's...
come on. That key ring of yours is always hooked to your belt.
It's not
Accusing everybody.
Hey, look, stop it! Copper's the only one who's got any business with it.
Oh, now wait a minute, Gary. You've been in here on
But
several
then
occasions.
he also willingly
what? Is that
gave
supposed to
up
clear
his
him?
leadership
Bullshit.
because he saw people were stressed and distrusting of him. So he willingly laid down his gun or his leadership baton and was like, I think you're going to feel a little bit easier if somebody else is in charge. To me, this shows that he's not a very egotistical man. He is willing to give up his reins, his captainship, for the sake of the many, to ease everybody's minds. But the desperation definitely came through during the blood test when he was about 50,000% done with everything. And then when the generator blew, he was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? There was always that sense of desperation and trying to make sense of things and not knowing what to do, because since he is very by the book and the thing is very much outside rational thinking, it threw him into a tizzy and got him a little bit scared. Gary is a good leader because a good leader knows when to do things by the book, but then also knows when to step back and admit that they don't know everything and can give up the reins to somebody else. Now we're on to the characters that deal with things in a scientific way, a scientific approach. First up, we have Blair, who is the camp's biologist. He is intelligent, methodical, and paranoid. Blair is the one that was asked to do an autopsy on the thing. He's the one that comes to the conclusion that it imitates life forms and absorbs them. He's the one that sees what danger that they are all in. And then once he sees that, he does a complete 180. And it's like, oh, goes kind of cuckoo nanners, as I call it. He kills all the dogs. He destroys the helicopter. He destroys the tractor. He destroys the radio so nobody can contact anybody. He is trying to keep the infection maintained. So if you want to give Blair some props, he is trying to save the world. But instead of doing things rationally and calmly, considering his intelligent and methodical scientific nature, he goes off the deep end and has to be locked away. So his cheese slid off his cracker and he was never able to get it back on. The paranoia really did Blair in. And I think a lot of it is scientists, they do things by the scientific method. And if something is outside the realm of understanding, goes outside of the scientific method, then it goes outside of their paradigm and what they know. And for this, it went outside of Blair's paradigm and what he knew. And all he knew was that he had to stop this getting out by any means necessary. And then he got infected and turned into the Thing. Rest in peace, Blair. But most everybody got infected or died. This movie does not have a happy ending, if you're wanting to know, but that's an aside. Next up, we have Copper, who is played by Richard Dysart. He is the camp's doctor. He is someone who is very rational, calm, and procedural. Copper is the one who wants to go to the Norwegian camp to find the information. He brings back videotapes and some papers. Copper is the one who initially thought of the blood serum test. Copper was the one who was helping with the autopsy. He did the autopsy on the Norwegian, while Blair was subsequently doing the autopsy on the Thing. So he was wanting to whittle down what could be possible and come up with answers. And then we all know how he met his end. Poor guy.
Windows, wheel that defibrillator over here. Put some grease on those panels.
You're gonna have to sleep sometime, McCready.
Oh, real light sleeper, child. Anyone tries to wake me.
Clear! Clear!
Clear.
Yeah, Copper was probably one of the most straightforward characters. Pretty much, this is who he was. He's a doctor. He is procedural in the way that he does things. And this procedure and like following his paradigm, his medical paradigm, helped keep him relatively calm and thinking straight throughout the entire movie. Again, up until his ghastly and grisly end. Next up, we have Fuchs, who is played by Joe Paulus. He is the assistant biologist. He is also intelligent, but also diligent and cautious. So Fuchs is very Fuchs seems just there until he pulls Mac aside and says, "Hey, I gotta talk to you. Blair's cracking up. I took one of his notebooks and this is what I read." And he's the one that found out the information about how, yeah, even though we're burning it, it's not dead yet. Also, when Blair was too far gone, he was looking through his notebooks. Whenever Copper was one of the ones suspected from being the Thing, they thought Copper sabotaged the blood. Fuchs was the one that was trying to come up with a way to figure out who was the Thing. So Fuchs, he's very, very detail-oriented and dedicated. And then when it came to his death and how he was found, and them suggesting, well, maybe he burned himself before it could get to him. Think about what it would take for you to know that you are doomed or you're being attacked and to set yourself on fire. That is dedication, and thinking about the fact, like, I don't want to be one of those things, but I don't want anybody else to be infected. Poor Fuchs. Next up, we have those characters who are completely in the realm of paranoia and isolation. First up, we have Windows, who's played by Thomas G. Waits. He is the radio operator, who is a very anxious and jumpy kind of fellow. You could definitely tell this from the beginning when he was having trouble reaching people, reaching McMurdo Station, and then he kept having trouble reaching McMurdo Station and growing suspicious of Gary and running off to try and get a gun and absolutely freaking out. To me, this dude operated at the baseline level of paranoid. Also, if you think about the way that he reacted whenever it was revealed that Palmer was the thing, he froze. A normal fear reaction, we either do fight or flight or we freeze. Windows froze, and unfortunately, that sealed his fate. We have someone who is paranoid to begin with, and that adds to the already growing paranoia that is surrounding the camp. Whenever you have a character that is constantly 100% paranoid and on guard, sometimes it can be a good thing, but sometimes it can be detrimental. And in Windows' case, it was detrimental. Next up, we have Clark, who's played by Richard Masur, who is the dog handler. He is quiet, very much a loner, protective, especially of the dogs, and suspicious. So you think about it, he's the main one that he had a real bond with the dogs, a real kinship with the dogs. He tried to stop McCready whenever he was killing the dogs that the Thing was trying to assimilate. He did not want Childs to be the leader, and even when McCready stepped up, he was suspicious of him. Also, what are you talking about? Whenever Blair was insinuating that, oh, you're infected because you've been around all of these infected dogs. And I mean, it's a fair assumption. One of the dogs ended up being affected, so how does anybody know if the dog infected any of the other dogs? But this suspicion of his led him to try and quietly grab a scalpel, try and get buddy on McCready's side so wouldn't expect it whenever Clark tried to stab him. And this suspicion led to McCready shooting him. And that is how he met his end. Clark ended up being a red herring. He was not one of the Things. He was not infected. But he sure played suspicion very well, both on his end and making us believe that he could have possibly been infected. Being constantly suspicious and on guard might have done him well if it was just a one-on-one situation, but in a group situation, it did not serve him well. Then we have Knowles, who's played by T.K. Carter, and he is the cook, who is jovial, happy-go-lucky, but also pragmatic and cautious. You think that Knowles is the cook, what use is he? He doesn't take anything too seriously. But he actually took things very seriously. Consider when he was out with McCready, and McCready asked him after they discovered Fuchs' body, hey, come up with me to the shack. I left the lights off, and now they're turned on. He found McCready's torn long johns, cut him loose, and was explaining to everybody why he did it. This is pragmatic because Knowles dealt with the situation sensibly and realistically based on the evidence that he had right in front of him. He saw McCready's torn long johns. He thought McCready was the thing. He cut him loose and left him out there to freeze. I mean, hell, if I'd found those long johns, I would probably do the same thing. You have to assume, though, that he was infected and turned into the thing because his fate is ambiguous. He hears a noise, walks off. McCready asks him, hey, how's it coming along? And he gets no answer. So you're just like, wait, what? Where did Knowles go? And that's his caution coming into play. He hears that noise. He wants to go investigate it to see what the hell is going on. But this caution probably led to his death, much like being overly suspicious led to Clark's death. And last but not least, we have the people who were victims and transformed into the thing. First, we have Norris, who is played by Charles Hallahan. He is a geologist who is quiet and kind of unassuming. So he was just that guy, if you looked at him, you'd be like, oh, he couldn't possibly be the thing. Like, this is nuts. He even refused the role of leader whenever Gary is like, hey, Norris, I don't see anybody objecting to you. So not only quiet and unassuming, but also likable. And Norris turned it down. And then you see Norris clutching his chest, being in pain. He's one of the ones that rush McCready whenever McCready breaks back in from being outside, and then has the heart attack, and then gets transformed. Nobody was expecting Norris to turn into a thing, and especially they weren't expecting him to split up into so many parts. If you think about it, the thing has had a million different transformations and several different transformations already up to this point. So the thing doesn't have a consistent form. Nobody has any idea what it looks like. Seeing Norris turn this grotesque made everybody just go, and it's almost an exact antithesis to the fact that he is quiet and unassuming. Whenever he turned into the thing, it was not quiet and not unassuming in the slightest. Next up, we have Palmer, who is played by David Clinton. He is also a mechanic like Childs. You see those two kind of buddy up in the movie. He is laid back and humorous. Probably part of the reason why he's so laid back is that he smokes a lot of pot. I have to wonder how much pot he brought with him to Outpost 31. But anyway, the humor and the fact that he was so laid back, I think are important character traits because it throws you off. Because I remember when I first saw it, I wasn't expecting him to be the thing. Like, not at all. He wasn't even on my radar as being a potential candidate to be the thing. But he was. That is a pivotal moment because it shows that, the blood test, it actually worked. And it showed that he was hiding in plain sight this entire time. And nobody picked up on it. I mean, good job, Thing. Nobody, I guess, was supposed to pick up on it. But, man, that reveal and then learning he was the thing made you go, oh, and it's because of those key traits. Are you going to suspect someone like Palmer? No. And then last but not least, we have Bennings, who's played by Peter Maloney. He is a meteorologist, a dude involved with the weather. He's practical and cautious. There was no hiding in plain sight whenever it came to Bennings. Bennings was the one that wanted the dog locked away and not entering the camp, which I don't blame him because the dog was part of the reason why he got shot. Also, Bennings was the first visible transformation, and his transformation was the turning point of the entire movie because that's when they realized, oh crap, this isn't just a creature. It is one of us. So it may not have been a visible transformation had Windows not caught it and ran off. to get McCready, where McCready and Fuchs were talking, and tell him, hey, Bennings, and then they were able to visibly see it for themselves. And then that scream, oh my god, that scream. There's an antidote whenever people ask how they got the iconic scream. And John Carpenter said that they recorded a ton of different screams, including Bennings, and it was supposed to represent the dying death screams of everybody that the Thing killed. That is terrifying. The Bennings thing is cornered. It has no way out, so its last thing is to try and scare him. And it didn't work. But yeah, Bennings was the first thing to get killed. The first human thing to get killed. He went early. Damn. There are several things that stand as symbols and metaphors for something greater. The Thing itself is a symbol and a symbolic representation for the unknown and for fear. We have Cold War anxieties that were wrapping up, and the idea of there being an enemy that is hiding in plain sight and you may not know who it is. The Thing perfectly symbolizes that this. It is something that is hiding in plain sight and nobody has any idea who it is. Isolation is itself a symbol. The base is set in Antarctica, the most remote place on Earth. The men are isolated, they're alienated, they're in a harsh and unforgiving environment. This harsh and unforgiving environment is bleak in and of itself, and it mirrors the upcoming despair and mistrust that the men are soon to face. And last but not least, we have blood as a symbol. Blood is a life force. Blood carries oxygen. Blood is pumped through our entire system. If we don't have blood, then we are not alive. So in a sense, we trust our blood to do the job that it was meant to do. And in this sense, in the movie, blood equals trust, like in the blood test. If your blood doesn't react to the hot needle, then you are human and I can trust you. If your blood does react to the hot needle, you have, in a sense, betrayed everybody because you are the Thing. So blood is life force, blood is trust, and an indicator of trust in the Thing. There are some cultural references in John Carpenter's The Thing. As I mentioned in Symbolism, there is a bit of a Cold War paranoia and a Cold War scare, also known as the Red Scare. It is the fear of an enemy who is not like us and who is hiding in plain sight. The fear and paranoia in this film reflects what was going on during that time, during this period in history. Then you have references to body horror and humanity. As I mentioned in themes, the idea of what makes us human, that if anyone could be the Thing, then we're questioning what makes a person human. Losing your autonomy, losing your control. It is nods to films like The Fly, so talking about the original Fly, not the one that came out in 1986, and other nods to works like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which came out in 1978. Again, about losing your identity and your autonomy and your control. And also, there are references to Lovecraftian horror. John Carpenter is a fan of Lovecraft's work, and he references Lovecraft in some of the names of things and people in the 1980 movie The Fog. And In the Mouth of Madness is not a direct adaptation of any of Lovecraft's work, but it is Lovecraftian. Lovecraftian horror deals with the insignificance of humanity in the face of an unknown threat, which is prevalent in The Thing. The Thing is an unknown threat, an unknown creature that is outside our realm of understanding, so how in the heck can we destroy it? And there you have it. There's our deep dive and analysis into John Carpenter's The Thing. We have talked about symbolism in The Thing. We've talked about themes and cultural references. We have analyzed the characters. There are a lot of reasons why I love John Carpenter's The Thing, but if I had to pinpoint one reason, it's the theme of isolation. Isolation has always been one of my biggest fears, and for a time I was isolated, especially as a kid, from my peers. I was heavily bullied. I was made to feel like an outcast. And in a sense, I was in my own little Antarctica, my own little frozen corner of hell. John Carpenter does a great job of bringing my own personal fear to life through the location, the general atmosphere of fear, and the characters. And that is why I have always personally connected with this movie. Thank you for sitting through this deep dive into John Carpenter's The Thing. I would love to hear your thoughts on The Thing. Anything you could think of, why it's your favorite movie, your favorite character, your favorite scene, thoughts and theories as to why certain things happened. I want to know it all. Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this kind of deep dive and want me to do more, then let me know that as well. And sadly, class is dismissed, everybody, for now. But I will see you next time. Bye.